pregătit de Delgado, acolo este, va fi corner, dragi ascultători.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Val Verde Broadcasting. In a kind of New Year's treat and break from the normal shambolic live streams that we're known and loved for over here at Val Verde Broadcasting, we've actually got a proper pre-recorded episode. Shock horror. And it's another one of my kind of industry insider chats. I think that's a bit of a naff name, but it's what we're going with, so fine. Industry insiders. Why not? So today we have the enormous privilege of speaking to Mr. Rob Meyers, who works in the very heart, the beating heart of the Hollywood machine, if that's not too murdered a metaphor to use. But Rob, you are a visual effects artist, is that right? Working in LA?
Right. Yeah. I've been working here for, over 20 years on many things, great and small. Some you probably hate, some you probably love.
Yeah. Well, we're going to go through your credits, obviously, and talk about some of them and all that. But I think a lot of what we're finding and through doing these kind of chats with people, as we have with directors, and me and Richard have sat down and chatted kind of about our side of the industry. But what we're finding is a lot of people in our audience, such as yourself, are also either in the industry or wanting to get into the industry. So we're finding that there's a lot of people are getting a lot of service out of these kind of chats. So which is really great. And so I want it to continue. So we're very grateful for you for taking the time out. Where did you what kind of got you off the ground in terms of your career in Hollywood?
Well, I was living in Phoenix, Arizona, where there's really no film industry to speak of. I guess they have some Old West studios out there. But since I was a kid, I wanted to be an animator. And I started drawing early, and I found a little film program out there where I took some classes. I mean, and this was back in the days of where everything was film and analog. So I kind of got into their program there, worked in the TV studio, took a computer animation class, which was kind of my first experience with animation at all. And right around that time, 20th Century Fox announced that they were opening their animation studio in Phoenix. So I put in a reel for that. It was complete crap. But I guess out of over 10,000 submissions, I got in.
Nice.
And that was on a Don Bluth film called Anastasia. And, you know, he was one of my heroes as an animator. And so that was kind of a dream job. That was my start. And that place went for about 3 years, I think, before Toy Story came out and ruined everything. Traditional animation was out the door within a few years. I mean, I think it was Toy Story and then A Bug's Life kind of sealed that.
Right.
So I got to work on The Iron Giant was my last animated feature, which was great, but I guess that was a good one to go out on.
Definitely. No, that's and it's become it's sort of, I think, achieved cult kind of classic status, hasn't it? Is it the last sort of properly animated film, would you say?
It was one of the last. I think the last one was like Disney's Frog Prince or something like that.
Right.
It was either that or the one with the cows and David Spade.
Oh yes, okay, yes, okay, very good. Yeah,
but there were just a handful of animated films that made it out the door before everything went digital.
Do you see it coming back at all? Because obviously we see kind of a resurgence of people wanting to do things more analog, like shooting on film and everything. Do you think there'd be a market for that?
There might be a market for that look. I think there have been some attempts to use CG to do a cell animated look. I think if anything, it would probably come back that way. I don't see any traditional animation in the works right now. Haven't heard of anything.
Because of course they brought the Iron Giant back for was it Ready Player One as a character?
Yes.
Would that have been, I'm assuming, CG animation?
Yeah, that was CG. I don't think they even really attempted to make it look cell shaded, did they? It just looked like it was lit.
Yeah. Okay, very cool. Well, what a great start! That's an amazing start to a career. Obviously, then you I guess made your move into digital effects. And I'm looking at your early stuff. End of Days. We've got to talk about End of Days, right? That's 21 years ago. My goodness, with the Thomas Aquinas and all that good stuff. What did you do on End of Days?
End of Days. It was the title sequence that I worked on. So after working on Iron Giant, I had to very quickly learn digital. I had a little bit of experience in CG, but I had to really get up to speed and find some jobs. And none of my early CG stuff really impressed anyone. But I did these little titles, kind of interstitial titles between the sections of what I had worked on on the animated films. And I sent that to Richard Greenberg's studio in LA. And the guy there named Bruce Schluter was impressed by that. And I got a job in motion graphics and title design.
Nice.
So that was one of the first few jobs, I guess. There was working on that End of Days sequence. It was a bunch of kind of little psychedelic visions of end of the world prophecies, and the title for each credit came up in kind of a burning effect.
Right.
So that's what I worked on. It was nothing exciting.
That's cool. That's exciting. I think that's exciting. I think it's very cool. Nice. Very good. Well, then I suppose the next thing that has kind of slight Valverde, what would you call it? I don't know. Links is Ghosts of Mars. That's a film we've kind of spoken about. That's the film. Now, Richard will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we filmed an episode of It Ain't Broke for that, and then it's been lost. But we did actually talk about it, but it's become a literal ghost in itself. So what did you do on that?
It was very minor. There were some shots of these kind of turtle Muppet guys when I think was it Natasha Henstridge?
Yes.
In that, she kind of has like a vision, and she sees the history of Mars or something, and I think those guys appeared in her vision, and it was just kind of pulling them off of blue screen and putting them on a background.
Oh, okay.
It was a few shots.
Nice. It's such a bizarre movie that, I mean, because Richard and I find it fascinating to watch, even though it just doesn't. It's one of those Carpenter movies that, for whatever reason, just doesn't land for us. It's like there's just, I don't know why. And I'm not talking about the visual effects at all, but I just mean the kind of pacing of it, the I don't know, the story. I mean, we don't really know what the story is. It's just really weird. But it's one of those ones where we're just really happy that it exists. But it's strange. I think. Then moving on, this is going to sound like an obscure one, but this is what I was referring to before. There is a film in your credits that does kind of link to me in a very, very tangential kind of way, which is the Jessica Alba, Paul Walker oceanographic epic Into the Blue, which there's a house featured in that, and it was designed by my grandfather. So what did you work on that? I'm trying to think what was animated in that. I suppose there's sharks and stuff, isn't there, and that kind of thing. There
was just a shot at the very end when the bad guy dies. There's kind of this underwater explosion that blows all his skin off.
I remember that.
Yeah. And so that was. They just had a footage of him kind of shaking, and I went online, picked out some images of skulls and rib cages, and matched that up to his movements, and then used a morphing program to match to his body movements, and kind of did the compositing on that, so it the blood comes out of his chest, and I don't even remember how that looked.
I thought it was, well, honestly, and I'm not just saying this because I that is one of the most sort of striking images I think of the film, and it was something I remember. It's Josh Brolin, isn't it, getting his face kind of blown up, but it's underwater, which surely makes it 10 times harder because you've got to imagine it's not just it's everything's got to react like it kind of would underwater, because I think he sets off, he's in a plane, isn't he, or something, and someone sets off a explosion, whether it's from a pressurized tank or whatever it is, and you just get this sudden shot of him, and you literally see like all his face kind of peels off, and you see like it's really quick, right? But it's so effective. So that's awesome to know that's how that was done. That's very cool. So you Google image searched a skeleton and put
yes.
Very cool. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was a very manual brute force thing, but it worked.
Yeah, sure did. Yeah. No, it looked fantastic. I wondered if that was what you did on that. That's really very cool. Very, very cool. Moving on, I suppose what's the next thing? I mean, we're jumping several years ahead, but we've got, I guess, The Amazing Spider-Man. That's probably the next thing that I would kind of bring up. So what was because we're getting really into the era now. I think once you get out of the noughties, I mean, then you're into proper kind of films. Like every frame of a film nowadays seems to have a visual effect of some kind, some sort of digital effect, whether it's a brighter sky or there's so many things that what I mean, like cleaned up buildings or changed lampposts or just anything. So once that came around, what was the gig on that?
a bunch of bridge shots when he's fighting the lizard on the it's some bridge in New York. Don't remember the name of it, but that was all live action plates with reflections. No. It was based on live action plates, and I had to recreate the water underneath the bridge. So it needed all the reflections from the city, the lighting on the bridge. So I had to replicate that in CG. It was mostly through textures, and I think I also worked on the lighting of the bridge and the car. When the car goes off the edge, Spider-Man shoots his webs and saves the guy inside. So it was those shots.
Nice, very cool. A very pivotal moment, actually. That movie. And then I'm going to come back to, because I want to ask you kind of a bit more kind of detail about how you do all this wizardry. But just sort of getting through some more credits. You've got Avengers: Age of Ultron. That's a big movie. That's a huge movie, massive movie. Great movie. What did you do on that? What was on that one? That's a big effects heavy movie, right?
Yeah. So it was the opening on that, the very opening sequence where I think we start with Iron Man and the camera flies through the forest. Mm-hmm. There was snow on the ground. And it's just one continuous shot, I think, for about a minute. Was originally 4 or 5 camera setups that were blended together with live action, CG, stunt people. We have a shot where Captain America goes up in the trees, and that's a completely different setup. And then, we come back and look the other direction. And it was basically a live action setup blended together with my shots, which were replicating the snow on the ground, the trees, and the near trees, and the trees going off into the distance.
Wow. That's because is it that big shot that kind of culminates in them all jumping the big hero shot as they go
yes.
into... Right.
Yeah, that's one of the ones on my reel.
Yes, of course.
That was pulled as a splash page for I think the website for the film.
Yeah, that was the big image. That was the big shot for that. I think one of the big ones. Yeah, amazing. Well, there you go. So because because I mean that I remember it now. It's it's going around finding each of them as they're going towards the castle or whatever, and
right,
and then kind of culminates in that really cool shot. So wow. So that's So you worked on the money shot, so to speak. And that's amazing, man. That's very, very cool. Very, very cool. And I guess, staying with the Avengers, you've got Infinity War. What was because again? So was it just you who did all that blending in the trees and the snow, or was it a team of you? Do you run a team?
It was a team. There were a couple of other artists who worked on the CG for that, and a couple of compositors that put it all together. Right.
Very cool. Yeah, because you see, I mean, obviously, especially with the Marvel films, people have been conditioned to sit through the credits now because they're waiting for the thing, and the reams. I don't mean to make you seem, I don't want to make you seem like insignificant. Sorry,
no.
I don't mean that at all. But the team, I mean, because not only is it digital artists, but it's of course all the units and the shooting units and blah blah blah. But it's just this tome that comes up before you of columns of people. So you assume that to make a tree requires a whole department and takes them 3 years or something. But is that so? You work in how many people would it take to make that shot work once obviously it's been filmed and everything?
Yeah, like I said, I was working at ILM, and it was I think about 2 or 3 other CG artists that worked on that, and because it's a long shot, so there's a section in the middle that was done by other people. I think the Captain America motorcycle shot and the Hulk picking up the tank and throwing it, that was someone else. And I did kind of the end caps for that, the start and the end of it. And that was all blended together. I believe it was 2 compositors that worked on that. And the thing about those shows, you mentioned the reams of credits, and it's not even one studio. I worked at ILM. There are several other effects studios that you'll see in the credits on the show like that. So it's just insane.
The number
of people that give up their lives for 6 months to a year to make something like that happen.
Because I suppose is the reason for that so that they can meet a deadline, rather than, because if they just used one company, it would take them so long to, because much like your Toy Stories and your stuff, it takes Pixar forever to make those. Because is it because it's just one company, or is that, how does that work?
Well, Pixar has a pretty large staff to handle that. I don't think they farm anything out. But on an effects film, it's pretty standard that ILM will grab all the choice shots, and they won't be able to finish everything usually on a film. So the smaller shots go out to other studios. And they'll take it from beginning to end on whatever sequence they have. So each chunk of the film is pretty much finished by a different studio.
Right. Amazing. So the last one that we're going to talk about is The Last Jedi. I thought I would ask you about that. The supposedly controversial Last Jedi. Is it controversial? I don't really know. It seems to get a kicking around here, but
yeah, I'd say it's controversial. Not everyone was, happy with the way everything happened, but at least it looked good.
I was going to say, well, the controversy was certainly on the story and character. It had nothing to do with the visual effects, which were striking on that. And I had a good time with it. I'm not a big Star Wars guy. Like, I enjoy them. The last one I did see, what's that even called? Rise of Skywalker.
Right.
And was thoroughly bored, but I mean, whatever, that's fine. No Star Wars for Duncan ever in his career, but there we are. But no, Last Jedi was I thought was very good. What did you work on that?
So that was the crate battle sequence on that the salt planet.
Very cool.
So I was basically working on the ground for that. Where as the I forget what they're called. They're like skip barges or something like that. They skid along the ground and leave red trails behind. So I was working on the trails in pretty much every shot of that sequence.
Amazing.
And it had to match up with these other sequences. There were some that were live action, I think, with CG over the top. And a few other people worked on a couple of shots, but I think it was about 60 shots in that sequence. And it was on really short notice, like about 3 months I had to work on all those.
Wow. Yeah, hurry up and wait, as they say in the film industry. That's amazing. Was that kind of sequence kind of informed the whole marketing campaign for that film? Because I remember it was very much white with red strikes across it to replicate that kind of look. So I mean, that was again a very pivotal part of the movie that you worked on. So that's amazing. Would you say? I mean, like obviously there's been a lot of CG's gotten a bad rap over the last 20-25 years since it kind of really came in. I would say most people use it without really understanding what they mean when they say CG, and it often what they're referring to is bad, obvious kind of lazy CG, but don't realize that it augments an awful lot of what they're seeing as well, and it helps. Even just painting out wires is kind of like, well, that's CG now. That's a computer generated image. Do you think it's a I mean, you must think it's a good thing, obviously. But I mean, is it a do you think it deserves that? Do you think it's or is it just as good as whoever's using it?
Well, if you sit down at lunch with a bunch of CG artists, I think everyone agrees that we look fondly back on the days when everything was practical. And we'll call out when something should have been practical. Something like CG Tarkin would be a good case for that.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, we want to have work, but we definitely respect the old school way of doing things. And whenever something is done practically, it's great. I think that CG is just another tool. And it should be used along with whatever the most appropriate tool for any shot would be.
I feel the same about actors. I think we're just tools. But no, very cool. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think in more recent years, I mean, certainly people like Christopher Nolan and stuff have kind of shown that, it can be a great tool just for augmenting or for doing as much practically as you can. But I mean, as it's like people still use miniatures, don't they? And then use those to patch them into patch. That's such a amateur term. That's not what you do with it at all. But you know what I mean? Comp it into shots and then blend over the kind of cracks and match the lighting states and everything. That's so there's those skills still exist. The kind of practical skills. It's just obviously. CG does help with all that. Do you think it's things like Tarkin, for example? Is that what kind of? I mean, is that a lazy choice? Is that do you think that was a convenience choice, or was it I don't know, what made them do that? Because they had Guy Henry, right?
Not sure. I think a good casting choice just to recast that part would have been a good decision. At the same time, ILM is known for kind of pushing boundaries in advancing the craft, so it has to be tried somewhere. And I'm sure the next time they do it, it'll look that much better.
And apart, obviously, from Into the Blue, what's your favorite film that you've worked on?
Oh man, I think as far as like a film that I want to watch, The Iron Giant is up there. Man, I haven't seen either of the Avengers. I really should get on that. But
what did you do on Infinity War? I didn't even ask that, did I? Or did I?
Infinity War. Yeah, so that was the opposite of Age of Ultron. I did the end of that. So the end battle when they're fighting in Wakanda. I did all the trees, all the forest backgrounds surrounding the battle area there.
Right.
And some of the ground terrain, the city. So I set those up and did the lighting.
Wow.
And that again was like about 60 shots or so done in a short time frame.
So when you say did the lighting, do you mean like, do you have to create like an artificial lighting state for each shot so the computer knows where to put light? Is that?
Yeah, you basically you have a simulated light, like a sunlight, and that works on a mathematical model to simulate the way that real sunlight would behave.
Right.
And depending on the shot, the camera can turn around and maybe the lighting isn't flattering from that direction. You just kind of have to pull it around to rim light it a little bit more.
Wow.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's tuned to every shot. A lot of shots will share a lighting setup, but but my job is to kind of sweeten that and make every shot pop.
Amazing. And do you work like predominantly from home, or do you have an office you go to do it?
Right now, yes. I usually work in the studio, so I'm in the Bay Area right now. So I'm actually working for a large company right now doing advertising, but I was kind of moving back and forth between ILM and Tippett Studio for several years.
Yes, because you wanted to talk about Phil Tippett, didn't you? So we must do that before.
So after I worked on Age of Ultron, I had the chance to work at Phil Tippett Studio, and they still do a lot of stop motion. But I was working in CG doing environments, so populating landscapes with trees, lighting that, lighting virtual sets, set extensions. And I did get a chance to work with Phil quite a bit. He directed several of those projects, and I worked on his short film Mad God, which is actually I think up to 4 parts now, which is kind of his pet project he's been working on for 30 years or so. Stop motion with some CG elements, but I was working on all practical miniatures, set building, painting miniatures, and one of the last things that I did there was driving this huge World War II tank across a tabletop set with explosions going off, and it was just probably a bucket list
amazing
job there.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. Did you get to chat to him or anyone there about kind of the old things like sorry, someone just tried to call me on Skype. I'll cut that out. My brother-in-law. Sorry. Yeah, did you get the chance to sort of speak to Phil about any of the old days stuff, like I guess RoboCop or any of that kind of thing?
Yeah.
I have to ask for Richard. You understand? Sorry.
Used to go to lunch with a group of people with him, like about once a week. So yeah, had heard plenty of war stories from him. I guess on Starship Troopers 2, him and his team almost got arrested by the Berkeley police shooting previews for that show, just running around with kind of 2x4s painted black like guns. And he got out of that by telling them, "Oh yeah, I worked on RoboCop," and the cops were just like, "Okay, let this guy go."
Amazing. So in terms of where you kind of see the industry going, obviously we've just had a massive year of impact on it, with lots of delayed films and almost perpetually delayed stuff. Things like Black Widow and No Time to Die being kind of canaries in the coal mine that got hit just at the wrong time. What do you kind of? I mean, a lot of people are pointing to streaming platforms as kind of the answer to all that. Do you think that's the case? Is Hollywood's hand going to be forced, do you think, in that regard, or do you think they're going to just hold out until we can all get back in the theaters again?
I think a lot of projects are going to inevitably move to streaming. I know that Disney is planning a lot of Star Wars series, Avengers series, and I think they're kind of moving more in that direction. I hope that we'll still see feature releases in the future, but I know that the whole lockdown situation has kind of transformed the technology of it and the workflow. If you look at Mandalorian, the amount of stuff that's done in real-time engines on that is amazing, and they project it there right on the stage with these huge LED arrays to create virtual sets. And but they still use practical models. I guess the Mando's ship is a motion-controlled miniature in a lot of shots. So yeah, I think real-time engines are going to be a big thing. I think streaming is going to continue to grow. I don't know what the world would be like if there were no more feature films, though.
I know, right? It's just it's a sobering thought. I mean, we've the idea of. I mean, like for me, I know James Bond. The idea of that kind of coming to a streaming platform, well, yeah, we'll get to see it, but part of the the excitement for me is actually going to the theater and watching it for the first time on a big screen, and yeah, to have that taken away, I suppose it's a way, it's finding a way to make that model work. I think that I understand the kind of distribution model and the fact that it has to be, territories have to be sold and all that stuff, but it's more, I suppose, figuring out a way to, I mean, in a simple world, like you'd have someone like Netflix or Prime, or someone would be able to buy a cinema chain and include it as a higher tier package or something, and then that way, you could go watch The Mandalorian in like a box set binge watch session on a Sunday or something, or you could watch the latest releases as part of your package if you want to go to the cinema. If you don't, you can pay for the lower package and just stay at home. That would be the sort of most democratized way, I guess, of it working. But obviously, that's never going to work kind of globally. It'd be far too much, I think, for even one of them to kind of to take on. And then you've got the issue of running costs of cinemas and that kind of thing, and how does that work, and how do you make the kind of it seems to me like the kind of opening weekend box office take being the measure of a film is probably going to have to go away. I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see after this how things go. I know a lot of theater chains are struggling, and I wonder how the studios, maybe this is more convenient for the studios, this situation, to not have to split their profits with theaters anymore.
Do you think films like all the films that were kind of due for release this summer, do you think they're going to get caught in some sort of lost leader time warp or something? Because I mean, they were all predicated. I mean, that's why a lot of people have been talking. I think I didn't Apple TV Plus offer Eon or MGM like money for No Time to Die, but it was like 300 million, which sounds like a lot, but then actually it's a potentially $1 billion film, because when you look back at Skyfall and Spectre, they both made, Skyfall made over $1 billion and Spectre made 900 or something. It's like, that's, really you've got to buy them out of that if you're going to put it on your streaming platform. So it's like a case of, is that just going to get caught in this kind of time warp and never get released, or have to wait until everything's back to normal?
Yeah, I don't know. I think we're going to see. I think what we're going to see right after this is all over is going to be different than the way that it goes down the road, I think.
Yeah, interesting. Okay.
Right now, people are, I think, platforms are trying to kind of lowball to get, a good deal on a movie or a series. But who knows what it's really going to be when all this is over.
Yeah. And lastly, I just wanted to ask if you had any words of advice or words of wisdom for anyone who's kind of looking to get into the visual effects game. I know that there are people in our audience. I think my cousin even at one point was making kind of overtures about possibly being able to get into that. Is there obviously not to paint you as old in any way, but the industry is now very different probably to when you started. What do you think the kind of the in is for most people nowadays?
I think first off, learning a game engine is probably a good idea, because these real-time engines are going to be a larger part of production going forward. So learning a 3D package is a definite must, but getting into real-time engines to some extent is probably a good idea. You definitely need to get a reel together and keep it current. Put your best stuff on it. Cut out anything that's not the best. Have a place on the web where you can link people to, because you never know when you're going to meet someone who is a future producer. It's good to have a broad skill set. Knowing multiple disciplines is a good thing, because you'll run into times when these studios all work as a kind of a segmented pipeline. So you have previs, and then you have animation, and then you have modeling, then animation, then lighting and compositing. So if you know any two of those things, you're more likely to stay employed when the animation is done and they send the animators home. If you can light, that's a good thing.
Right. Of course.
Just getting good with a CG package, knowing it well, developing efficient workflows, being a problem solver. You need to have a good eye for realism, and never stop learning. You should always be learning new techniques, new technologies. Read anything you can find online about the state of the industry, what's coming next, what shows are running. That's pretty much it.
Nice. Thank you so much. Well, I hope that's helped some of you. I'm sure it has. It certainly opened my eyes to an awful lot of that side of the business. It's certainly something that I think, as an actor, I think anyone involved in the film industry needs to be aware of everyone else's trade. From my own perspective, I know it's like I'm essentially, when I'm in front of the camera, I'm providing options. And in the case of Erica, I literally options for the player, but also I'm not gonna. I don't think I can really announce it, but I'm doing a very similar project to Erica, which I'm very excited about. I'm starring in that. We're starting in February, and again, it's like I see that as being another branch of kind of, we're moving into this kind of game film hybrid thing of choose your own adventure type stuff, and that that's something that's really nice to be kind of sort of at the vanguard of. So I completely take your I agree, and I can sort of see 100%, like, it's about being the guy who can step in last minute and solve someone's problem is often what will get you in the bigger doors, and because that's what a lot of these people are, right? I mean, it's like there is an element to this that even though it's the establishment, it's still trying to keep up with other stuff and trying to be ahead of it. So if you can answer the call and be that guy without them having to train anyone, then it's you're the guy, right? Or girl, I should say. Very cool. All right, man. Well, thank you so much, so much for coming and hanging out and you know, telling us all about your career so far and kind of what's going on and where the puck's going and giving us your words of wisdom, because we really appreciate it here. And we thank you as well for your patronage, because obviously you're one of our glorious patrons who is at some point hopefully going to receive a poster that went a long time ago, but it's going to take ages because I think it literally went and then they said all flights from the UK are grounded, so it's probably sat in somewhere in Heathrow Airport waiting to get on a plane, but it will be with you soon, I hope.
Well, it is the holidays.
Yes.
The mail is going to get held up.
That's it. All right, guys. Well, I shall pop. Have you got anywhere you'd like me to send people? Do you twit? do you Insta? Is there anything you'd like me to pop
I am on Twitter. I think it's Rob RMFX.
Cool.
No, Rob Meyers VFX. Rob Meyers VFX on Twitter.
I shall pop it. I'll pop a link in the description below, and obviously we've got your show reels going to be on the front of this, so everyone will have seen your work, which is really cool, and they've probably seen it all anyway without realizing it. So that's really awesome. All right, man. Well, thanks so much. Have a great rest of the year, what there is left of it, and hope maybe we could do this again sometime, because it was really great fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Partia